You lie in the dark. And the smallest sound, a click in the wall, a car 3 streets away, pulls you back from the edge of sleep. There is a name for this. Your brain isn't broken or oversensitive. It's running a system older than language, one that treats sudden silence as a question it has to answer. And here is the strange part. A steady wash of sound can quiet that system faster than silence ever could. The thing you reach for to escape noise may be noise itself. Welcome to Sleepy Science Facts. Tonight, we follow that paradox down to the level of single nerve cells. Not to solve it, but to rest inside it. Close your eyes now. The sound around you is not coming for you. Let your shoulders drop down toward the bed. And now we begin. The question underneath tonight is simple to ask and, surprisingly, deep to answer. Why does a brain trying to fall asleep often calm down faster with a little sound than with none at all? Most of us assume silence is the ideal sleeping condition, the purest form of rest. Yet sleep laboratories and ordinary bedrooms tell a more complicated story. In near total quiet, many people become more alert, not less, listening harder to a room that has stopped giving them information. Tonight's 100 facts circle this one idea, that the sleeping brain is not seeking the absence of sound, but the right kind of presence. We begin with what your ears are actually doing while the rest of you tries to let go. Your auditory system has no eyelids. Vision can be switched off by a thin fold of skin, but hearing stays open through the entire night. From the first drowsy minutes to the deepest stretches of slow-wave sleep. This is not an oversight of evolution. It appears to be a feature. For most of human history, the ear was the night watchman, the sense that kept working when the eyes had closed and the body lay vulnerable. Sound was the early warning system. Understanding that the ear never truly rests is the first step toward understanding why a sleeping brain pays such close, quiet attention to whatever it can hear in the dark. Sound is, at heart, just moving air. Tiny waves of pressure pushing against the eardrum a few thousand times a second. White noise is a particular kind of these waves, a blend that contains every audible frequency at roughly equal intensity, all at once. The name borrows from white light, which mixes all colors of the visible spectrum. When you hear true white noise, you are hearing the auditory version of that even mixture. A flat, full, slightly harsh hiss, like an untuned radio or steady static. It carries no melody, no rhythm, no edges. And it is precisely that lack of edges, as we'll see, that the drowsy brain finds so easy to ignore. Not all soothing noise is white. Pink noise tilts the balance, putting more energy into the lower frequencies and less into the high ones. So it sounds softer and deeper, closer to steady rainfall or wind moving through trees. Brown noise, sometimes called red noise, tilts even further toward the low end, producing a rumbling, oceanic quality like a distant waterfall. Many people who find white noise too sharp drift more easily to pink or brown. These are not arbitrary labels. Each describes a specific mathematical shape to the sound's energy. The fact that the brain responds differently to each hints that it is not just hearing volume, but listening to structure. To understand why steady noise helps, it helps to know what the brain dislikes. The sleeping brain is not bothered by loudness so much as by change. A constant sound, even a fairly loud one, tends to fade from awareness, while a quiet but sudden sound, a single creak, a dripping tap, can jolt you wide awake. Researchers describe this as a response to contrast rather than to absolute level. Silence is a low, flat background against which every small event stands out sharply. A wash of steady sound raises that background, smoothing the landscape so that individual events no longer rise above it. In a sense, noise works by hiding noise. This hiding has a name: auditory masking. When two sounds compete, a louder or broader one can render a softer one effectively inaudible, not by silencing it, but by occupying the same neural channels first. White noise is unusually good at masking because it spreads across all frequencies, leaving few gaps for an intruding sound to slip through. The footstep in the hall, the partner's breathing, the refrigerator's hum, each gets folded into the larger wash and loses its power to capture attention. Your brain is not being fooled so much as relieved. It no longer has to decide whether each small sound matters. Now we arrive at the strange idea hiding inside tonight's title: stochastic resonance. The word stochastic simply means random. Resonance means a kind of amplification. Put together, the term describes a counterintuitive phenomenon found across physics, biology, and engineering. The finding that adding a certain amount of random noise to a system can actually make it better at detecting weak signals. Not worse. It sounds backward. We expect noise to drown things out, but in the right systems and at the right level, a little randomness can lift faint, buried signals up to where they can finally be sensed. The nervous system appears to be one of those systems. Here is a way to picture it. Imagine a faint signal that is almost, but not quite, strong enough to cross a threshold, like a ball resting just below the lip of a bowl, unable to roll over the edge on its own. Add a gentle, random jiggle, and every so often, that jiggle nudges the ball over the rim at exactly the moment the weak signal is also pushing. The randomness doesn't carry the message. It lends the message just enough energy to be noticed. Too little jiggle and nothing happens. Too much and the signal is lost in chaos. Somewhere in between lies a sweet spot, and biological systems seem tuned to find it. Stochastic resonance was first described carefully in studies of climate cycles and later confirmed in electronic circuits and lasers. But its appearance in living tissue is what makes it matter for us tonight. Sensory neurons sit close to a threshold of firing. A weak input that would normally fail to trigger them can, in the presence of low-level noise, succeed often enough to be detected. Experiments on touch, balance, and hearing have all shown versions of this effect, where added noise improved sensitivity rather than ruining it. The body, it seems, does not treat all randomness as an enemy. Sometimes randomness is the helper that completes a fragile signal, so we can sharpen the central question. Why does your brain crave a little sound to sleep? Part of the answer is masking. Steady noise smooths the landscape and hides intruders. But part of the answer may be deeper and stranger. The nervous system may be a noise-loving machine, one that uses a baseline of randomness to stabilize itself. A brain in total silence is not in a neutral state. It may be in a slightly starved one, hunting for the low hum it expects the world to provide. The sound you add at bedtime might be less a sedative and more a kind of nourishment for a system built to listen. Consider what happens in a soundproofed room. Anechoic chambers. Spaces engineered to absorb almost all sound are among the quietest places ever built. People who spend time inside them often report that the silence becomes uncomfortable rather than peaceful. They begin to hear their own heartbeat, the rush of blood, the faint ringing of their own auditory nerves. With no external sound to mask these internal ones, the body's quiet machinery becomes startlingly loud. The lesson is gentle but clear. Silence does not remove sound from your experience. It simply changes which sounds you notice. And many of those replacements are harder to ignore than the rain you were trying to escape. The faint internal sounds, revealed in deep, quiet, point to something remarkable about the ear itself. The healthy cochlea, the spiral organ of hearing, is not a passive microphone. It contains cells that actively move, amplifying faint vibrations. And in doing so, it produces tiny sounds of its own, called otoacoustic emissions. Sensitive instruments can record these whispers leaking back out of the ear. Your hearing organ, in other words, is humming softly, even when nothing is playing. In a silent room, your brain may catch echoes of this self-generated activity. Steady external noise gives that restless, self-amplifying system something to lock onto, a calm tide instead of its own private static. There's an evolutionary logic to why sudden silence unsettles us. For our ancestors, a steady background of insects, wind, and distant water signaled a normal, safe night. The sudden cessation of that background, when the crickets stop, when the forest goes quiet, was often the more dangerous signal, the hush that falls when a predator moves through. A brain shaped by those nights may still read abrupt quiet as a reason to wake and check. Continuous, gentle sound, by contrast, whispers that the ordinary world is still turning, that nothing has changed, that it is safe to stop guarding. We may be calmed by noise because, long ago, noise meant the night was behaving as it should. The brain's first responder to unexpected sound is a small structure deep in the brainstem, part of a network that governs the startle reflex. A sharp, novel noise can trigger a response in well under 1/10 of a second, faster than conscious thought, tightening muscles and spiking alertness before you even know what you heard. This circuit is ancient and largely automatic. It cannot be reasoned with directly, but it can be quieted indirectly by lowering the contrast that sets it off. When steady noise fills the room, fewer sounds arrive as sudden, isolated events, and this fast. Primitive alarm has less to react to. The watchman relaxes because nothing keeps tapping his shoulder. It helps to know that hearing does not stop at the edge of sleep. It transforms. As you drift from drowsiness into light sleep, the brain raises its arousal threshold, the loudness a sound must reach to wake you. But it does not go deaf Studies of sleeping volunteers show the auditory cortex still responds to sound, still sorts the meaningful from the meaningless, still flags a name or an unfamiliar tone for closer inspection. Sleep is not a closed door, but a dimmer switch on attention. This is why the kind of sound matters so much. A predictable wash slips under the threshold easily. A meaningful or irregular sound is more likely to be escorted upward toward waking. One of the clearest signatures of this nighttime listening is a brainwave event called the K complex. When a sleeping brain detects a sound that might matter, it can produce a single large, sharp wave, a brief electrical flare visible on a sleep recording. Researchers think the K complex plays a double role. It helps evaluate whether the sound warrants waking. And when the verdict is no, it actually helps protect sleep by suppressing further arousal. In other words, your sleeping brain is constantly making tiny judgments about sound, most of them ending in a quiet decision to stay asleep. Steady noise reduces how often it has to make that call at all. The brain also leans on prediction, and this is central to why steady sound soothes. The nervous system is, in many ways, a prediction engine. It builds an internal model of what the world should sound like next and pays special attention to anything that violates the model. A constant, unchanging noise is the easiest possible thing to predict. Within seconds, the brain's model says, in effect, this will continue. Nothing new here, and attention drifts away. A silent room offers no such prediction. Every faint sound is a fresh surprise. By giving the brain something perfectly predictable to expect, white noise lets the prediction engine power down its alarms and rest. This is why true randomness, smoothed over time, becomes so easy to ignore. White noise contains no pattern to learn, no melody that resolves, no rhythm that builds. There is nothing for the brain to anticipate and nothing for it to track. Music, by contrast, however pleasant, keeps a part of the mind lightly engaged, following the line, expecting the next note. The very featurelessness of noise, the quality that makes it boring to a waking mind, is exactly what makes it restful to a sleeping one. The drowsy brain does not want a story. It wants a surface so even that there is nothing left to hold on to. Habituation is the name for the brain's tendency to stop responding to a sound that repeats without consequence. The first time a clock ticks, you hear it. After a while, you don't. Not because the sound has changed, but because your brain has filed it as harmless and stopped routing it to awareness. Steady noise habituates almost instantly, since every moment is much like the last. This is one reason it works as a sleep aid. It crosses quickly into the category of background, joining your own heartbeat and breathing among the sounds you no longer consciously hear. The work of falling asleep is, in part, the work of letting sounds become background. There is a meaningful difference between hearing and listening, and sleep depends on the gap between them. Hearing is the raw arrival of sound at the ear, mostly automatic. Listening is the act of directing attention, of asking what a sound means. You can hear a fan all night and never listen to it. The trouble with silence is that it invites listening. With nothing to hear, the mind starts hunting. reaching out for any faint event and examining it. Steady noise gives hearing something to do so that listening can stop. It occupies the automatic channel and frees the attentive one to fall quiet. Sleep lives in that quietness. The volume of your sleep sound matters more than people expect, and louder is not better. Most sleep researchers suggest keeping background noise gentle, roughly the level of a soft shower heard from another room, well below the intensity that could, over years, strain hearing. The goal is not to overpower the room, but to raise its floor just enough that small intrusions disappear beneath it. This connects back to stochastic resonance. The benefit appears at a moderate, well-chosen level of noise, not at the extremes. Too little and intrusions still break through. Too much and the sound itself becomes the disturbance. The sweet spot is quiet, steady, and easy to forget. Where the sound comes from shapes the experience too. A small speaker close to the bed creates a different field than sound, filling the whole room. And the brain is sensitive to that geometry. A sound that seems to come from everywhere and nowhere, diffuse, without a clear source, is easier to dissolve into background than one with a sharp location your mind can point to. This is partly why rainfall and ocean recordings feel so enveloping. Their sources are spread across space and time, with no single point to fix on. The brain stops trying to locate them and simply lets them be the weather of the room. The body has a quiet partner in all of this: the autonomic nervous system, which governs the shift between alertness and rest. Falling asleep requires a tilt away from the alert, sympathetic branch toward the calming, parasympathetic one, a slowing of heart rate, a loosening of muscle, a deepening of breath. Sudden sounds push the system the wrong way, toward alertness. A steady, unthreatening soundscape supports the gentle tilt toward calm by removing the small alarms that would otherwise keep nudging the body back toward readiness. The sound itself does not sedate you. It clears the path so that your own physiology can do what it already knows how to do. It's worth saying plainly that noise is not a cure for sleeplessness, and the science here is best held lightly. White and pink noise appear to help many people fall asleep faster and stay asleep through minor disturbances, especially in noisy environments. But results vary widely from person to person. Some studies are small, and a quiet few people sleep worse with added sound. What seems consistent is the underlying principle rather than any single product. The sleeping brain is calmed by steadiness and unsettled by contrast. Whether that steadiness comes from a fan, the rain, or simply a well-insulated room matters far less than the steadiness itself. We've gathered the first pattern. The sleeping brain is not chasing silence, it is chasing predictability. A world so even and unsurprising that its ancient watchman can finally stand down. Steady noise serves that need in at least two ways: by masking the intrusions that would startle, and, more subtly, by feeding a nervous system that may be built to expect a baseline hum. Seen this way, the central question reframes itself. The brain does not crave noise the way it craves food. It craves the absence of surprise. And gentle noise is simply one reliable way to deliver it. That is where the next arc begins, inside the sleeping brain itself, as it listens. Let your attention rest, for a moment, on the sound around you, whatever it is. The hum of the room, the faint weather of your own breath. You don't have to follow it. You don't have to name it. Let it be there, the way the floor is there beneath the building, holding everything without being noticed. Notice that you are safe enough to stop listening. There is nothing in this sound that needs you. Let your jaw soften. Let the space behind your eyes grow dark and wide. The sound will keep going whether you attend to it or not, so you are free to set it down. Breathe out slowly, and let the next fact arrive on its own. Inside the inner ear, sound becomes motion before it becomes sensation. Vibrations travel into the fluid-filled spiral of the cochlea, where they ripple along a delicate membrane. Different frequencies peak at different points along this spiral. High tones near the entrance, low tones deep inside. So the cochlea acts like a tiny piano laid out in a curl. White noise, containing all frequencies, gently stirs the entire length at once. There is no single bright spot of stimulation, no peak demanding notice, just a broad, even murmur across the whole instrument. The structure of the noise matches the structure of the organ, and the result is a sound the ear processes almost effortlessly. Riding atop that membrane are the hair cells, crowned with bundles of microscopic filaments that bend when sound passes. Their bending opens tiny channels and turns mechanical motion into electrical signal. The moment sound becomes information. Remarkably, some of these cells don't just detect, they push back, contracting in rhythm to amplify faint vibrations. This active amplification is exquisitely sensitive, which is part of why a perfectly silent room can feel unnervingly loud with internal sound. A steady external noise gives these eager amplifiers a calm, continuous input to work with, rather than leaving them straining at the edge of their own sensitivity, hunting for something to magnify. From the ear, sound travels a long relay toward the cortex, and along the way, it passes through a gatekeeper deep in the brain, a relay station that helps decide what reaches awareness. During sleep, this gateway tightens, letting less sensory traffic through to the higher centers. But it does not close completely, and it remains tuned to significance. A meaningful sound can still slip past the gate. A meaningless, steady one is increasingly held back. Understanding this gate explains a nightly mystery. How you can sleep through a loud, familiar fan, yet wake instantly to a quieter sound that matters, like your own name spoken softly across the room. That selective wakening reveals something tender about the sleeping mind. It is still you in there, still carrying your attachments and concerns. A new parent wakes to the faintest stirring of an infant while sleeping through traffic and storms. The sleeping brain has not stopped caring. It has simply narrowed its caring to what it has decided matters most. Steady noise helps by lowering the volume of everything that doesn't matter, sharpening the contrast so that meaningful sounds still get through while the meaningless wash recedes. In a strange way, masking the unimportant can make the truly important easier for the sleeping brain to catch. The auditory cortex itself stays partly active through the night, and what it does in sleep is more than passive monitoring. Recordings show it continues to process the patterns of sound, comparing what arrives against what it expected. When the input is perfectly regular, this comparison generates almost nothing. No mismatch, no surprise, no signal worth passing along. The cortex idles. This idling is precisely the restful state that steady noise encourages. Rather than feeding the brain something to analyze, white noise feeds it something so predictable that analysis stops. The listening machinery keeps turning, but it turns on emptiness, and that emptiness is a kind of peace. There is a specific brain response, sometimes called the mismatch response, that fires when a stream of repeated sounds is broken by an oddball, a different tone, a sudden gap, an unexpected change. It can be detected even in sleeping and inattentive brains, which makes it a window into the nighttime mind. The mismatch response is, in a sense, the brain's surprise reflex, the thing that says, "That was different." Continuous noise contains no oddballs, so it triggers this response rarely. A silent room, oddly, is full of potential oddballs. Every faint sound is a deviation from nothing. Noise works by removing the contrast that the surprise reflex feeds on. Loudness and threat are processed somewhat separately, which is why a gentle but eerie sound can be more disturbing than a louder, friendlier one. The emotional centers of the brain weigh not just how loud a sound is, but what it might mean. A soft, ambiguous creak in an empty house can spike anxiety more than the steady roar of a highway, because the creak carries uncertainty and the roar does not. Steady noise is emotionally neutral. It makes no claim, threatens nothing, asks nothing. Part of its calming power is this very blankness. It is a sound that has agreed, in advance, to mean nothing at all. Many people discover that the noise that soothes them is one they associate with safety. The whir of a fan from childhood, the rain against a window in a warm room, the hum of a car carrying a tired child home. These sounds can become linked, through years of experience, with the feeling of being held and unbothered. The brain layers learning on top of biology. So when researchers test white noise, they are often measuring something tangled with memory and association. The physics sets the stage, but your own history decorates it. The sound that lulls you may be partly a sound that once told you everything was all right. Newborns offer a striking clue about where this comfort begins. Many infants settle more easily to steady noise. The shushing sound caregivers make instinctively. The whir of a vacuum. The static between radio stations. One leading explanation points backward, before birth, to the only acoustic world a fetus has ever known. The womb is not silent, it is a constant, enveloping rush of blood flow, heartbeat, and muffled body sound, often measured at a surprisingly high, steady level. For a newborn, true quiet is the strange and novel state. Steady noise may simply sound like home. If the womb is the brain's first soundscape, then white noise at bedtime may be touching something very old in us. The continuous low rush a fetus hears for months becomes, perhaps, the template for safe and ongoing. This idea is best held as a thoughtful hypothesis rather than settled fact. but it fits a wider pattern. The sounds that calm us towards sleep tend to be steady, low, and enveloping, the acoustic shape of being surrounded rather than exposed. Whether or not the womb explanation is complete, the preference itself is real and observable, and it appears early, before culture has had much chance to teach it. The principle of stochastic resonance shows up again in an unexpected place. Balance. Studies have found that adding tiny, imperceptible vibrations to the soles of the feet can improve balance in some people, because that faint noise lifts weak pressure signals over the detection threshold. The same logic. A little randomness, sharpening a faint signal, appears in studies of touch and even of certain visual tasks. This matters tonight because it suggests the effect is not a quirk of one sense, but a general property of how nervous systems handle weak information. The brain, across many doorways, seems to be a system that benefits from a measured dose of noise. There is a delicate balance in all of this, captured by what engineers call the noise curve. Plot detection against the amount of added noise, and you get a rising, then falling shape. Performance improves as noise increases, peaks at an optimal level, then declines as too much noise finally swamps the signal. This inverted U is the fingerprint of stochastic resonance. It explains why bedtime sound has a sweet spot. A whisper of noise may not be enough to smooth the room. A roar is too much and becomes its own intrusion. Somewhere between lies the level your particular nervous system finds most restful, and finding it is often a matter of gentle trial. Not everyone sits at the same point on that curve, and individual differences are large. People vary in baseline sensitivity to sound, in how quickly they habituate, in how reactive their startle systems are. Highly sound-sensitive people may need a softer, lower noise, or none at all, while others sleep best with a fuller wash. Age, hearing health, and even mood shift the optimal point from night to night. This is why no single setting works for everyone, and why the research, honestly read, supports a principle more than a prescription. The invitation is not to copy someone else's sound, but to listen for your own threshold of calm. Sound can also serve as an anchor for a wandering mind, which is often the real obstacle to sleep. Many people lie awake not because of external noise, but because of internal noise. The looping thoughts, the rehearsals of tomorrow, the replays of today. A steady external sound offers the attention something neutral to settle on, a soft place to rest that isn't a thought. It works a little like a focus point in meditation, not by forcing the mind blank, but by giving it one gentle, undemanding thing to return to whenever it drifts. The fan does not stop your thoughts. It offers your thoughts somewhere quieter to land. We should be careful, though, not to lean on sound as the only door to sleep. The same masking that protects rest can, if relied on too heavily, make a person feel unable to sleep without it. The healthiest relationship with sleep sound tends to be flexible. A tool used when the environment is noisy or the mind is racing. Not a requirement without which rest becomes impossible. The brain is adaptable, what it learns to depend on. It can also learn to release. Tonight's purpose is understanding. not prescription. The deepest comfort is knowing how your own listening works, so that you can meet it kindly. If your eyes are still open, let this be the moment they grow heavier. There's no need to keep them on the screen. If something here has helped quiet the room a little, you might let this video keep playing through the night. It will stay steady, the way the rain does, long after you've stopped listening. Stay as long as you like. We'll keep the sound soft. There is real evidence that certain sounds, carefully timed, can do more than mask intrusions. They may gently deepen sleep itself. In sleep laboratories, researchers have played short bursts of soft sound precisely synchronized to the slow brainwaves of deep sleep. In a number of studies, this acoustic stimulation appeared to strengthen those slow waves. The large, sweeping rhythms associated with the most restorative stage of sleep. The effect is subtle and the research still maturing, but the direction is intriguing. Sound, the very thing we associate with waking, may, under the right conditions, become an instrument for going deeper. The brain that listens may also be the brain that, with help, rests more fully. Those large, slow rhythms of deep sleep are worth knowing by name. Slow wave sleep, sometimes called deep or delta sleep, the stage where the body does much of its physical restoration. During these waves, great populations of neurons rise and fall together in a slow, synchronized tide. This is the sleep that feels most precious, the kind whose loss leaves you groggy no matter how long you stayed in bed. The finding that gentle, well-timed pink noise may reinforce these waves is one reason researchers have grown interested in sound, not just as a sleep aid at the doorway, but as a possible companion deeper inside the night. Why pink noise in particular for this deepening effect? Pink noise's energy profile, weighted toward lower frequencies, happens to resemble many of the natural soundscapes humans evolved within. And, some researchers note, it loosely mirrors the spectral shape of the brain's own slow activity. Whether that resemblance is meaningful or coincidental remains an open question, and it deserves honest uncertainty. But pink noise's softer, deeper character is widely reported as more pleasant than the harsher hiss of pure white noise. And pleasantness alone matters for sleep. A sound you find soothing will calm you regardless of the precise theory behind it. The memory-related benefits sometimes attributed to deep sleep add another layer of interest. Slow-wave sleep is thought to play a role in consolidating the day's learning, helping shift fragile new memories into more lasting storage. Some studies of sound-enhanced slow waves have reported small improvements in memory the next morning. These findings are genuinely promising, but still preliminary, drawn from modest samples, and should not be oversold. The honest summary is gentle. There are hints that the right sound at the right moment might support the brain's nightly housekeeping, and those hints are worth watching as the science continues to grow. It's important to separate two very different uses of nighttime sound. One is masking, raising the room's noise floor to hide intrusions, which simply requires steady, continuous sound. The other is stimulation, brief, precisely timed pulses delivered in sync with brainwaves, which requires technology that can read the sleeping brain in real time. The first is something anyone can do tonight with a fan or an app. The second remains largely a research setting, not a bedside reality for most people. Knowing the difference protects you from disappointment. The steady wash you choose tonight is doing the well-established job of masking. And that job alone is plenty. The aging brain offers a poignant chapter in this story. As we grow older, deep, slow-wave sleep tends to thin, and the night fragments more easily, with more awakenings and lighter sleep overall. Part of the interest in sound-based methods comes from the hope that they might gently support the deep sleep that age erodes. Early research in older adults has explored whether acoustic stimulation can recover some of those lost slow waves. The results are mixed and modest, and certainty would be premature. But the gentle hope is real, that the sense which never sleeps might one day be enlisted to help the aging brain rest more deeply. Steady sound also quietly shapes the architecture of the night. Sleep moves in cycles, roughly 90 minutes long, descending into deep sleep and rising toward lighter, dream-rich stages, again and again until morning. The lightest moments of these cycles, near the surface, are when we are most likely to wake, and most vulnerable to a sudden sound tipping us into full alertness. A masking noise is most valuable precisely at these fragile crossings, smoothing the surface so that a passing car or a creaking house doesn't snag us awake at the very moment we are most easily caught. Consider how this plays out across a single disturbance. A loud sound during deep, slow-wave sleep may pass unnoticed, absorbed by the high arousal threshold of that stage. The same sound during light sleep can wake you completely. This is why some nights you sleep through a storm, and other nights a dripping tap defeats you. It depends not only on the sound, but on where you were in your cycle when it arrived. Steady masking noise reduces the gamble. By keeping the room's sound floor even, it lowers the odds that any single intrusion will arrive loud enough, at a light enough moment, to pull you fully awake. There is a quiet psychological dimension worth naming. For many people, choosing and starting a sleep sound becomes a ritual, a signal to the body that the day is ending and rest is permitted. The brain loves such signals. Consistent cues at bedtime help train the transition into sleep. In this sense, the sound works on two levels at once, physically masking intrusion and symbolically marking a boundary between waking and rest. Part of its power may lie not in the acoustics at all, but in the gentle promise it makes each night. You may stop now. The day is done. The watch is covered. We've reached the midpoint, and the question has deepened rather than resolved. We began asking why the brain craves a little sound to sleep, and we've found masking, prediction, evolution, the womb, and the strange gift of stochastic resonance all woven together. But underneath them runs a single thread, and the second half of the night will follow it. The sleeping brain is not seeking emptiness. It is seeking safety. And steady sound is one of the oldest languages safety speaks. What remains is to ask why silence? The thing we thought we wanted so often fails to deliver it. That is the question the rest of tonight follows. Halfway through the night now. There is nowhere you need to be. Feel the weight of your body against the bed. The simple fact of being held by something solid, something that asks nothing of you. The sound in the room is still there, steady as a tide that has been coming in and going out long before you arrived and will continue long after you've let go. You don't have to keep it company. Let your breathing find its own slow rhythm. Let the sound become the edge of the room, then the edge of your hearing, then simply part of the dark. You are safe to drift. Nothing here is waiting for you to stay awake. Rest now. The facts will keep coming, soft and unhurried, and you may follow them or let them go. Silence fails us partly because the brain abhors an information vacuum. With no sound to process, the auditory system doesn't switch off. It turns up its own gain, becoming more sensitive in search of input. This is the same reflex that makes a quiet room reveal your heartbeat. The brain, starved of the steady murmur it expects, listens harder. And listening harder is the opposite of falling asleep. Steady noise satisfies the appetite for input so the system can stop hunting. Think of it as a thermostat for attention. The auditory brain tries to hold a certain level of stimulation, and when the environment drops below it, the brain compensates by amplifying. Flood the room with too much sound and it strains to keep up. Drain it to silence and it strains to find more. The comfortable middle, a gentle, continuous wash, lets the thermostat rest at its set point, neither reaching up nor pulling back. Comfort lives at equilibrium. The phenomenon of stochastic resonance reminds us that the brain is not a clean machine working in perfect quiet. Real neurons are noisy by nature. They fire a little randomly, even at rest. And this background flicker is not a flaw to be eliminated. It is part of how the system stays poised and responsive, ready to detect the faint and the fleeting. A brain bathed in gentle external noise may simply be receiving more of the same currency it already runs on. The randomness outside meets the randomness within. Tinnitus, the perception of sound with no external source, often a ringing or hiss, gives a powerful illustration of why quiet can be the enemy. For many who live with it, tinnitus grows loudest in silence, when there is nothing to mask the internal signal. This is why sound therapy is a common comfort. A low background noise gives the brain something real to attend to, pushing the phantom sound toward the edge of awareness. Silence amplifies the inner ring. Gentle noise dilutes it. There's a clue in tinnitus about the brain's deeper habit. When it lacks expected input, it sometimes generates its own. Deprived of sound, parts of the auditory system can become overactive, filling the gap with self-made signals. This is the brain's discomfort with emptiness made audible. It would rather invent a sound than sit in true silence. Understanding this softens any worry about needing noise to sleep. You are not weak for craving it. You are simply listening to a brain doing what brains do. The masking effect depends on something called critical bands, the way the ear groups nearby frequencies together when judging what it can hear. A masking sound is most effective at hiding intruders that fall within the same band of frequencies. Broadband white noise covers all bands at once, which is why it hides so much so well. Pink and brown noise concentrate their masking in the lower bands, where many household disturbances also live. A closing door, Footsteps. A distant engine. The match is part of why they feel protective. Our hearing is not equally sharp across all pitches. The ear is most sensitive in the middle range, roughly where human speech lives. This is no accident. Much of what mattered to our ancestors arrived as voice and footfall in that band. It also explains why intruding sounds in the speech range, like a murmured conversation through a wall, are so distracting. They land precisely where the brain is wired to listen. Effective sleep noise often works by covering that vulnerable middle band, dissolving voices into an even wash. The brain's prediction machinery has a name in modern neuroscience: predictive processing. The idea is that perception is less a passive recording and more an active guess, constantly compared against incoming sense data, with only the errors, the surprises, passed upward for attention. Steady noise produces almost no prediction errors. The guess and the input match perfectly, moment after moment, so nothing rises to disturb the higher mind. Sleep, in this view, is partly a state of letting the prediction errors fall quiet. This is why a new or changing sound wakes you even when it is quiet. A novel noise generates a large prediction error. The world did something the model didn't expect. And that error is exactly what attention is built to catch. The dripping tap is maddening not because it's loud, but because each drop is slightly unpredictable in its timing, refusing to settle into a pattern the brain can ignore. Perfect regularity is forgettable. Slight irregularity is precisely what the mind cannot release. Consider the difference between a fan and a conversation at the same volume. The fan, being steady and meaningless, fades within minutes. The conversation, full of changing words and meaning, holds attention almost helplessly. The brain is built to extract sense from speech and struggles to ignore it. This is why noise that contains no information soothes, while noise that contains information, however soft, intrudes. The sleeping brain is not avoiding sound. It is avoiding meaning. Meaning is the thing that asks to be processed. Ocean waves and rainfall hold a special power, and part of it may be their gentle variation. Unlike a mechanical hum, natural sounds shift slowly and softly. A wave swells and recedes. Rain thickens and thins. These changes are smooth and patternless enough that the brain doesn't track them as events, yet rich enough to feel alive rather than sterile. Some researchers suspect this organic quality is more soothing than perfectly flat noise, though preferences vary. Nature's noise is randomness with a soft texture. There may be an evolutionary fondness for the sound of water specifically. Flowing water signaled life, drink, and safety to our ancestors. And its sound carries no threat. Predators stalk in silence, not in babbling streams. A brain shaped on the savanna and by the riverside may carry a quiet bias toward the sound of moving water as a marker of a safe, sustaining place. This is informed speculation rather than proven fact. But the near-universal comfort people find in rain and waves invites the thought. The default mode network, the web of brain regions active when the mind wanders inward, is deeply involved in the racing thoughts insomnia so many know, left without external focus. This network spins stories, worries, and rehearsals. A steady external sound gently competes for the resources this inward storytelling would otherwise consume, offering the attention an outward anchor. It doesn't silence the inner voice by force. It simply gives the mind a quiet doorway facing out, away from the loop. There's a reason monotony makes us drowsy in general. The droning lecture, the long highway at night, the rhythmic clatter of a train. Sustained, unchanging stimulation lowers arousal. The brain, finding nothing worth tracking, drifts gently towards sleep. Steady noise harnesses this same effect deliberately. It is monotony by design, an input engineered to be so uniform that staying alert becomes effortful and letting go becomes easy. The boredom that white noise induces is not a side effect to apologize for. It is the entire point. Habituation has limits, and they reveal something tender. A sound that is steady will fade from awareness. But the moment it stops, you may notice, the absence becomes its own event. Many people wake when a fan switches off, jolted by the sudden return of silence and its small intrusions. This is why continuous, all-night sound is often better than a timer that cuts out. The brain habituated to the noise, and the disappearance of the noise was the surprise it could not ignore. The startle reflex weakens with predictability through a process called prepulse inhibition. When a soft sound precedes a louder one, the brain dampens its startle to the loud one. A continuous background acts a little like a perpetual prepulse, keeping the startle system gently suppressed. Each potential jolt arrives already softened by the steady context around it. The watchman, hearing the same calm tone moment after moment, lowers his readiness to be alarmed. The noise is not numbing the alarm. It is reassuring it. Sleep sound interacts with temperature, light, and posture in shaping the descent, and it is only one thread in a larger weave. The body cools as it prepares for sleep. Darkness signals the release of the hormones of rest. A comfortable position lets muscles unclench. Sound does not work alone, and treating it as a magic switch sets up disappointment. It is one supportive condition among several, most powerful when the others are also in place. Comfort is a chord, not a single note. The cocktail party ability, the brain's skill at picking one voice out of many, runs in the background, even in sleep, which is why a meaningful word can surface through noise. This same machinery is what's steady. Meaningless noise leaves idle. There are no voices to separate, no signal to single out. So the powerful filtering apparatus simply rests. Give it speech, and it engages helplessly. Give it featureless wash, and it has nothing to do. Rest, for this system, is the absence of anything worth hearing. Some find that very low-frequency sound, felt almost as much as heard, is the most grounding of all. The deep rumble of brown noise, distant thunder, a far-off engine. These frequencies may resonate with the body in a way that feels enveloping and heavy, like a weighted blanket made of sound. The preference is individual, but the pattern is familiar. The deeper and steadier the sound, the more it tends to settle the nervous system toward rest. Low and slow is the body's vocabulary for calm. It's worth returning to honesty about the evidence. Across the research on sleep and noise, the picture is encouraging but uneven. Many people benefit. Effect sizes are often modest. Study designs vary, and a minority do worse. The strongest claim the science clearly supports is the one we've followed all night, that the sleeping brain is calmed by steadiness and disturbed by contrast. Beyond that principle, much remains genuinely uncertain, and a good night's understanding includes knowing where the certainty ends. There is wisdom in matching the sound to the problem. A noisy street argues for broadband masking. A racing mind argues for a gentle anchor. A partner's snoring argues for sound concentrated in the right band to cover it. The same tool serves different purposes, and the best choice depends on what is actually keeping you awake. Tonight, you might simply notice what your own obstacle is, the room or the mind, and let that guide what kind of quiet you reach for. The body keeps its own clocks, and steady sound can become a gentle timekeeper, used consistently at bedtime. A sound becomes a cue the circadian and sleep systems learn to read, a marker that says, "This is when we rest." Over time, the brain associates the sound with the descent into sleep, and the association itself begins to do some of the work. The first night, the sound masks. After many nights, it also signals. Repetition turns a noise into a ritual. Even the act of choosing to add sound is a small reclaiming of agency over a process that can feel maddeningly out of control. Insomnia often carries a sense of helplessness. The harder you try to sleep, the further it retreats. Doing one gentle, deliberate thing, like settling a soft sound into the room, returns a little quiet authority to the night. It is not about forcing sleep. It is about arranging the conditions kindly and then letting go, which is the only way sleep ever truly comes. The deepest stages of sleep are also when the brain appears to clear metabolic waste most efficiently, in a process tied to the slow rhythms of deep sleep, though this remains an area of active and evolving research. Much of it from animal studies, and the details in humans are still being worked out. To whatever degree, gentle, well-timed sound supports those slow waves. It might indirectly support this nightly cleansing. The link is plausible and intriguing, and it is also unproven. It is offered here as a quiet possibility, not a promise. So here is the larger idea, stated fully for the first time. The brain does not crave noise, it craves the signal of safety. And a steady, meaningless sound is one of the most reliable ways to deliver that signal to a system built to listen for danger in the dark. The remaining facts will carry a softer quality. Less explanation, more recognition, because the science has largely made its case, and what's left is to feel it. We move now from understanding why the brain listens, toward the gentler truth of what it is finally allowed to stop doing. Let the explaining fall away now. You don't need to follow the reasons anymore. There is sound in the room, and it is steady, and it means nothing. And that meaning, nothing, is a gift. Let your hands grow heavy. Let your face soften. Let the small muscles around your eyes release the work of looking. The watchman inside you has heard the same calm tone for a long while now, and he has set down his post. There is nothing to guard against. The night is behaving exactly as a safe night should. Breathe. Let the breath leave slowly, taking a little weight with it each time. You are allowed to stop listening. You are allowed to drift. The sound will hold the edge of the room so you don't have to. The ear was the night's first guardian, and tonight you can let it off duty. The steady sound is doing the watching now, telling your oldest instincts that the world is unchanged and you are safe to let go. The same wiring that once kept your ancestors alive in the dark is the wiring that now keeps you listening for a fan. It is not a flaw. It is care, very old, asking only to be reassured. White noise contains every sound at once, and so points to none. There is nothing in it to find, nowhere for attention to travel. It is the acoustic version of a wide, empty field, not frightening, simply open. Nothing is hidden in it, so nothing needs to be searched for. The mind, finding no path through it, stops walking and lies down in the middle of all that openness. Pink noise is rain remembered. It's low. Soft weight is the sound of weather that asks nothing of you. The kind you can listen to from somewhere warm and dry. The body knows this sound and trusts it, the way it trusts the smell of bread or the warmth of another sleeping person nearby. You do not have to listen closely. You only have to let it fall. Brown noise is the deep voice of distance. Far thunder, a low tide, an engine carrying you somewhere you don't have to steer. It settles into the chest more than the ears. For some, it is the most grounding sound of all. The sound of being held by something larger and unhurried. Let it be the floor beneath the night, steady and low, and let yourself rest on top of it. In the womb, before you had words or worries, the world was a constant rush of sound. You have always known steady noise. It was your first companion, the murmur you grew inside. When you reach for it now, you may be reaching back toward the oldest comfort you ever had. A sound that meant you were surrounded, safe, and not yet asked to do anything at all. The brain that cannot bear silence is not broken. It is full of a sensitivity that once kept its kind alive. The ring you hear in a quiet room, the heartbeat that grows loud. These are signs of a system finely tuned, listening well. Gentle sound simply gives that fine tuning somewhere soft to rest. There is nothing to fix in you tonight. There is only something to soothe. A faint, random murmur can lift a fragile signal into being heard. That is stochastic resonance. And it is a strangely kind idea. Sometimes a little noise is what completes a quiet thing. Sometimes the randomness is not interference, but help. The brain, it seems, has always known this. And tonight it is simply being given what it quietly expected all along. Tonight, the steady sound is not hiding the world from you. It is holding the world steady so you can leave it for a while. The room will still be here. The morning will still come. You are only setting them down, not losing them. The way you set a heavy bag by the door, knowing it will still be there when you need it. Sleep is a kind of trust. Trust that you can stop watching, stop bracing, stop solving. The sound in the room is a small proof of that trust. A continuous, gentle voice saying, "Still here, still safe, still here." You don't have to answer it. You only have to believe it. And let your believing grow as heavy and soft as the rest of you. The dripping tap keeps you awake because it is almost a pattern. Never quite. Most of life is like that. Almost resolved. Never quite. But you don't have to resolve it tonight. Let the unfinished things blur into the wash of sound, where edges go soft and nothing demands to be fixed. Tomorrow can have them back. Tonight they can simply dissolve. Notice how the sound has already faded from your attention. You stopped hearing it minutes ago. That is exactly what it was for. It crossed quietly into the background, joining your breath and your heartbeat among the things you no longer need to notice. That fading is the sound of falling asleep, and it is already happening, gently, without any effort from you. The body cools, the room darkens, the muscles unclench, and the sound holds it all together like a low, even floor beneath a quieting house. No single thing carries you into sleep. They gather, soft and unhurried, until there is nothing left to do but go. You are not falling. You are simply being lowered, slowly, by hands you cannot see. Your hearing will keep working all night, faithful and quiet, sorting the meaningless from the meaningful while you rest. You can trust it. It woke your ancestors when it mattered and let them sleep when it didn't. It will do the same for you, asking nothing in return. So you may close the door on listening now and leave the watching to something older and wiser. There is no perfect sound, no correct setting, no right way to do this. There is only the sound that lets you let go, and you are allowed to find it by feel, the way you find a comfortable position. Small adjustments, then stillness, then sleep. Stop searching for the right way. The way that quiets you is the right way, and you have already found it. The slow waves are coming now. The deep tide of restoration, the part of the night where the body quietly repairs and the mind files away the day. The steady sound walks you toward that depth and stays at the surface, smoothing the water so nothing pulls you back up. Let yourself sink past it, down to where the night does its quietest, most necessary work. Whatever you carried into this room, the unfinished, the unresolved, the things that wanted more of you than you had to give. Let the sound take their sharp edges. They will still be there in the morning, but lighter, blurred at the corners, easier to hold. You do not have to carry them into sleep. The sound will keep them, softly, until you wake. The night was never empty. It is full of the same gentle sound it has always held. The rush of blood, the murmur of weather, the low hum of a world that keeps turning while you rest. You are surrounded, not alone, held, not exposed. The dark is not a void tonight. It is a room full of quiet company. Let your breathing slow to the pace the dark prefers. There is no hurry in it, no destination. Each breath out is a small letting go, and the sound carries each one away into the larger quiet. You don't have to deepen it. It will deepen on its own. the way water finds its level, the way a tired body finally agrees to rest. The watchman has gone to sleep before you. The part of you that listened for danger has heard nothing but the same calm tone for an hour now, and has finally, completely, stood down. There is no one left on guard, because there is nothing left to guard against. The post is empty. The night is quiet, and you are free to follow him down into rest. You are at the surface of something deep and soft. The sound is the last thing tethering you to the waking room, and it is a loose tether, easy to release. When you let it go, you won't fall. You'll simply drift down into the dark that has been waiting, patient and kind, all night long. There is nothing beneath you but rest. Sound was the first thing you ever knew. Before light, before touch, before your own name. It is fitting that it should be the last thing here tonight. A steady murmur returning you to where you began, to the simple, wordless safety of being surrounded by gentle noise. You are ending the day where you started your life, held inside a soft, continuous sound. There is nothing more to understand. The explaining is done. What remains is only the sound, and the dark, and the slow weight of your own body sinking toward rest. Let understanding go too. You don't need it where you're going. Knowledge was the path that brought you here, but it is not the destination, and you may set it down at the door. The room is steady. Your breath is steady. The sound is steady. 3 quiet rhythms, none of them needing your attention, all of them holding you. You can let go of all 3 and they will keep going without you. There is nothing left that requires you to stay awake. Everything that needs to continue will continue on its own. Almost there now. The thoughts have thinned. The sound has become the dark, and the dark has become soft, and there is no longer any line between resting and being rested. Let the last fact arrive and pass like the others, asking nothing. You are already mostly asleep. All that remains is to stop noticing that you are still a little awake. So why does your brain crave a little sound to sleep? Not because it fears silence, and not because it needs noise, but because the steady murmur is the oldest word for safe. And safety is the only thing the mind ever truly needed in order to let go. The answer was never about sound at all. It was about being held gently enough by something asking nothing, that you could finally stop holding on. We started at the edge of sleep, startled by a click in the wall, certain that silence was the thing we were missing. What we found was a brain that never stops listening, and a strange gift hidden inside randomness. That a little noise can lift a fragile signal into being heard, and a little steady sound can tell an ancient watchman he may finally rest. Science was only the witness here. It watched the cochlea hum in the dark, watched the startle reflex soften under a steady tone, and named what the body already knew. The dripping tap was never the problem, and silence was never the cure. The thing you were reaching for was never quiet. It was the feeling of being safely surrounded. If this hour quieted the room enough to carry you under, it will do the same again. It doesn't run out, and it doesn't change. You can let it begin again tomorrow night. The same steady tide, the same soft permission to stop listening. Something is already loosening now. The way a held breath finally leaves. The way a sound you stopped hearing slips all the way into the dark. Let your breath slow to the pace that belongs to the night. If sleep comes, let it take you down past the surface, into the deep, slow tide where the body repairs itself and the day is quietly filed away. But if your eyes are already closed, stay there. There is nothing left to do. Rest well, gentle listener. The sound will keep its steady watch so that you don't have to, holding the edge of the room until morning. Fall asleep to gentle facts, where science becomes the softest place to rest. Good night.